So we're all here because of Mr. Gary Baseman, and I have had the pleasure of working so closely with Gary, and he's exceptional. This all started because Gary came to us and told us a story about him growing up in LA and how these toys of Mattel and other toys really impacted the road that led him to being the artist that he is today. So it's an incredible journey that he's been on. We're so excited to be just a chapter in his amazing career. And I'm so excited to be introducing you all to Gary Baseman. Come on out, Gary.
Thank you, thank you. Can you hear me? So is it better if I use this or if I just... No? So you can hear me better if I... Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to start off with thank you for coming here today. And of course, I want to thank Mattel Creations for this opportunity for this collaboration, which is really, really special. And from there, I'm going to do a sales pitch. Because right after this, I'm going to be doing a signing at 2:30. And we're going to be offering, again, these Uno decks that somehow really came out really nicely. Honestly, it was a project that at first, because when I was talking to Mattel Creations, I wanted to make a toy. And that's where Toby as well came from. But then they also kind of wanted me to do an Uno deck. And I'm like, just putting my art on a card is like, I want to make things. And they talked me into it. And the moment I got talked into it, I couldn't stop painting these images of my creatures interacting with Mattel's legacy characters. And so I started falling in love with these images. And then when I was working with Mattel Creations and then creating the idea of how the cards should look, each card ended up being like this kind of really beautiful work of art. So I'm really, really excited about the Uno deck. So you are all, in fact, I don't know if I even signed an Uno deck yet. I don't know. So you guys are the first in the universe to get a signed Uno deck, if you have one. And so I'm excited to sign them. But then also very dear in my heart that I'm gonna be doing a little talk after the signing is this book called The Mighty Paw, which was written by my old cat, Blackie, which is actually based on a true story about his family and heritage. And this project was a real dear labor of love, because this is a story that he told me after I traveled back to my parents' original hometowns, because he used to knock these red elephants off the side of the bed. I thought it was a game, but it was actually a ritual about his family and heritage. So if you guys, I think my studio has these books to get. And if you do that, I'm happy to sign them to you guys with a little drawing. And because this is an important story that seems to play more of a bigger role today, because it's about, the book is written about the time of the great hate between two sides that completely have and good reason to hate each other, but then somehow through desperation and love, they can find a balance. And so I'm going to put this over here just for now so I don't have to hold anything. So those are my pitches. I wish I could tell you to buy a Toby as well, but unfortunately they all sold out within a minute or a second. And this is who Toby Swell is. But I want to talk to you about how this all kind of came about. And this painting and the original drawings that we have available also. So with the painting and then with the drawings, if you're able to collect them, you're like collecting a part of Mattel and Baseman history. I was born and raised in LA, just like Mattel. And I grew up in the Fairfax district. And as a little kid, it was pretty much the most exciting time. So as a little boy growing up in the Fairfax district, I lived about across the street from the Pan Pacific Auditorium. And the Pan Pacific Auditorium back in the day was where, before there was the LA Convention Center. So that's where they would have all the car shows. And just think about what cars looked like in the 60s and 70s. They had boat shows, they had fishing shows, they had entertainment shows. And so that's where Elvis Presley first performed in LA before I was born in 1957. And that neighborhood was bustling. There was CBS Television City, so all the sitcoms and entertainment shows from Carol Burnett, All in the Family, were all filmed there. So I grew up in this neighborhood that was a mixture of, growing up in LA with all this entertainment, but then at the same time, I was surrounded by Holocaust survivors. So both my parents were also both Holocaust survivors who were originally from Eastern Poland, which is now in Ukraine, and they were able to come to LA, and they raised their children with the ideals of the American dream, which I grew up with. So growing up as a little kid in the Fairfax district was kind of a really exciting time. My mom was the head bakery sales lady at Cantor's, and so, which is a very famous bakery, and she actually used to bring autographs home to me. So again, because a lot of celebrities were over at CBS Television City, and then they would come over to get baked goods, and she would see them, and she would give me the autographs. And so the 60s and the early 70s, was such an exciting time with this explosion of pop culture. And that's where the growth of Mattel with Barbie and Hot Wheels and creepy crawlers, and the idea of toys just kind of exploded a child's imagination of what you could be or what you are. So even though now it's not appropriate to have toy guns, Mattel actually was a major arms dealer in toy guns and rifles back in the day. But for me, I would play with these guns because I would actually go back to World War II. And in my mind, I would be fighting Nazis to save my family's life. But at the same time, they also had the guitar. So you could be a rock star or a country singer, And so even like playing Barbie, I wasn't afraid to play with Barbies. In fact, my next door neighbor used to have all these Barbies, so I was the one guy who had to play all the roles of all the men roles back in the day. And also I loved Hot Wheels and growing up in LA with car culture. So, Mattel played like such a strong role in me growing up in society. My favorite doll as a little boy was a Casper doll, which is this guy right here. And back then, I never thought twice, even though now when I look at the idea of having a Casper doll, who I loved way too much to the point where I practically destroyed him, and I practically destroyed most of my toys as a little kid because I loved things way too much. But the idea of having a Casper doll, and Casper is actually, a little kid ghost. And basically, what is that? That's a dead kid who doesn't know that he's dead, and he just wants to play with the neighbor surrounding kids or animals, and he's freaking everybody out because he's dead. But I loved him more than anything. And then when I was and I have to thank my dear friend Mark Ryden, who I've been friends with for over 30 years. And he did this amazing, beautiful, brilliant collaboration with Mattel Creations. And he's the one who first introduced me to the people at Mattel. And when I got to see them, I was like in awe and excited because I wanted to produce everything with Mattel. In fact, the Mattel Creations people had to like literally put me in a cage to control me from wanting to make everything and anything. So for me, I could do that. I could do a Barbie. I could do a Hot Wheels. And instead of doing something easy that has a strong collector base, I decided to pick Maddie Mattel, who nobody knows about anymore. But for me, I like a challenge. And because the original Maddie doll was created with the same physical form as the Casper doll. And in fact, somebody online was telling me, or a friend of mine said online, isn't Casper just the dead Maddie Mattel? Which I don't know if that's the case. So, but Maddie as an original doll, and again, was very, very cool. And again, growing up with Mattel, even if I'm playing with Hot Wheels or Barbie, he's the logo. He's on everything. And so for me, growing up, being a very graphic kid, that ideal stayed with me. But again, so I love the idea of creating my own version of Maddie Mattel. But because for the last more than at least 20 years, if not more so, 25, 30 years, I love blurring fine art with toy culture. And I've been doing that from my very first vinyl toys that I did with Sony Creative in Tokyo called Vanimals, that I did this Dunce series. And from then, I was creating more vinyl toys, and then I had an exhibition called Dumb Luck, where it was this sculpture and a bunch of paintings of this rabbit, and all he wanted was his lucky rabbit's foot. And if you look at, you have to be careful what you wish for, because he was able to get his lucky rabbit's foot, but if you look at him, he has a peg leg. So it's like you be careful what you have to sacrifice to get what you really want. So then there was Toby. And Toby existed in my art as my alter ego. And I would draw him all the time. But then I wanted him to be even more so as an art piece. And so then in 2005, so this is the 20th birthday of Toby, so it's exciting to have the 80th anniversary celebration of Mattel with Toby as well, but it's also the 20th anniversary of good old Toby. And Toby, I wanted to blur the lines between fine art and toy culture in a gallery setting. So I had an exhibition called For the Love of Toby. But who is Toby? Well, kind of being my alter ego, but at the same time, for me growing up with Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Bugs Bunny, and growing up in LA, where this is where all these characters were created. I lived down the street from Bob Clampett, who had his series Beanie and Cecil, but he was one of the original Warner Brothers directors, creating the first Porky Pig cartoons and Bugs Bunny cartoons. Again, with Mickey Mouse down the street, it was Disney Studios. So just growing up there, I wanted to create my own iconic cartoon character, and that's who Toby was. Toby's name came about because Toby was the name of a girl who I was in love with as a little boy. So I grew up with with Toby Baumwert, who lived across the street, and she was just so cool. And I just fell in love with her. And her parents were also Holocaust survivors, but she was the one neighbor kid who would play with me and didn't talk down to me like all the other kids around, because they were much older. So I was the baby in the family by 10 years. So like my sister is here, my brother, Morris, I saw somewhere around here. So they were all like 10, 11, 13 years older than me. So I was the squirt. I think that's what Morris used to call me all the time. Hey, squirt. And, but Toby didn't treat me like a little kid. And so in my mind, I always had that special affection and love for her. And when I was creating my own character, that's where Toby kind of came about. So for the Love of Toby in 2005, I created 200 Tobys that were signed and numbered, and you could only get them in a gallery setting. So when it came to Mattel Creations, I wanted to create my own new version of the plush. And Mattel Creations was so accepting of the idea, and then to the point where they wanted to make him extra, extra special. Like, Toby has Maddie Mattel's sweater, but if you lift his sweater up, he's got his little Superman all-seeing eye, who Toby was like, he knows all and he sees all with his all-seeing eye. So, are you going to get back in here? Okay. Don't be so hard, Toby. Okay. Hold on. Anyways, so they wanted, and again, like even the way, if you look at the Casper doll, in fact, I have a vintage Casper, vintage Maddie Mattel, and his sister Belle in my installation. So if you first come into the gallery, we have some of my furniture mixed with a bunch of my things, some of my other art pieces, and some vintage Mattel dolls, toys, original Toby. And if you look at how Casper was, and again, a lot of the old toys that I love are kind of freaky in the sense of, instead of the whole head being formed, they always had half a head being formed, and then the back was kind of plush. And so for me, it was always kind of weird, and so that's what I wanted to do with Toby as well, is have the front part as a form, but the back part as a plush too, as a homage to all these old toys that I used to love. And when it came to Corey Helford also wanting to celebrate the idea of toys as art, and invited so many of my friends and so many artists to be in this show, like we have good old Luke Chu here and my friend Natalia Fabio right over there. I had a big challenge of creating a painting to match how much I love Toby as well. But also, if you look at the packaging for Toby as well, for me, it's also a beautiful work of art. And then the designers at Mattel Creations worked hand in hand in how to make it as special and graphic and playful as it possibly could be. So for me, I wanted to create a substantial 4x6 painting that kind of captured the 80th, this kind of explosion. There's a subtle homage to the Mattel logo with this kind of explosion in the background. I wanted, of course, to have Casper here and Maddie with the Uno deck and using a lot of Mattel properties. I put in good old Skeletor here with my character Ha-Cha-Cha-Cha. I have Aurora in a little hot rod for Hot Wheels. I have good old Barbie. We have the little Fisher-Price phone. And then in my own guitar of my character, Disco. And then I needed to have a special homage to my cat Bosco, who was I had for 4 years, who just recently passed away. So I wanted to remember him, and so I created a little Bosco in the box, which actually was one of the other possibilities that I could have created besides the Toby as well, is that Mattel has an amazing legacy of Jack-in-a-Box toys. And as a little kid, I love the ideas of Jack in a Box. I love the ideas of surprise. I love this notion of clowns and the silliness of what these things represented. And so that was actually one of my ideas that I was planning to produce until the Mattel Creations people said, "We can't make everything, Gary. Let's pick one." And in fact, what I really wanted with the Toby as well is that I wanted him to come with a half a dozen mini version of Mattel toys that Toby as well was playing with and loved too much. So I wanted a half-broken Barbie, like a three-wheeled Hot Wheels kind of falling apart, a jack-in-a-box, a guitar. And I wanted to produce all these things too, but of course, time and corporate decisions on finance or whatever, on what you can produce, we were able to at least get insanely beautiful Toby as well in a beautiful, beautiful box. I have no idea our timing. We have some more time. I'm also willing to take, again, the way I even like to give talks is that we're one big happy family. And if we have any particular questions, don't be afraid, raise your hand if you have a question, and I could try to answer it if Also, what we have going on here is my studio kind of put together a little carousel of images. There's Bosco, my real cat, that is part of Bosco in the Box. Here is from had an exhibition in Beijing celebrating the life and teachings of my old cat, Blackie, called 9 Lives. So you could see how much my inspiration in my art comes from my real life. And so Blackie the cat, the one who wrote The Mighty Paw, that I hope you guys pick up a book, which I'll be happy to sign. And it's actually, there's a great surprise in the book that, in the story, that he actually surprised me when he told me the story. I actually Blackie had a hard time with me a lot, had a hard time with me being able to translate what he was saying. Because he always felt cat was a much more romantic and sophisticated language than human. And so I used to have he was a talking cat, and so we used to have a show called The Blackie the Cat Show, starring Blackie the Cat and his boy Gary. He used to always get frustrated with me because he would tell me and I would try to translate it, and if I didn't get the nuance right, he would literally bite my nose, which he did 24 times drawing blood. And so telling the story became so important. So I did my best to translate into human, and I had the managing director of my studio, Denise A. Gray, translate it from human to English. But we're really happy with how the book came about. Blackie was alive when we did translate the book. He saw most of the finished paintings. He passed away in 2020 during the pandemic, and we finally got the book published through Hat and Beard, and we're just happy and excited to have that book now. Here I am growing up in LA, and this is pictures of me as a little kid where you could see that I peaked at age 4. It's kind of sad when you're like, okay, I was a good-looking kid until I was 4, and then it was downhill ever since. Here are pictures of Toby in his travels. Here I am in South Africa, but again, this is my studio in LA. Some of my other characters from Arur. This is a picture of me that my brothers and sisters put stuff all around. This is 3rd Street Elementary School. This is Bosco with his best friend Disco. Bosco always used to help me paint. I'm also known for my sketchbooks, and I usually would have the sketchbook but it's in my bag right now, but I'm finishing up sketchbook 157 in my lifetime and about to start 158. All right, so we have 1 minute or 3 minutes left for any questions, even though I said I'd take questions. So, yes.
So, on the box.
Okay, here.
On the box, there's a picture, there's a drawing of Toby, a girl, and holding a Barbie. Right. Is Toby that wild girl?
The girl, okay, so when I created Toby back in 2005, he had a girlfriend, and his girlfriend is named Marilyn. And Marilyn was the name of my very first girlfriend when I was in college. So I had a girlfriend for 4 years, from my first quarter of my freshman year to the last quarter of my senior year. And so her name was Marilyn. And so I had Toby's girlfriend named Marilyn. And then when I created many paintings, there was many, many different Marilyns. So they're all different girls, but they're all named Marilyn. Here with Toby as well, and she was kind of the original wild girl. And so there in the box we had Toby with Marilyn and a Barbie. Yeah. Okay, we have one more question before I'll go and start doing signings, and I'm happy to greet you guys and try to do a little drawing. Yes. There you go. Thank you very much.
Hi, Gary. I was wondering what the significance of your dripping is in your paintings and from your characters
Right.
that I've seen.
Okay. Well, drippings originally started from a sense of, in my paintings back about 20 years ago or more, I had these manifestations of desire bubbles. And so for me, at a time with my art, I just felt life, desire, longing was so great in the world that we lived in this kind of like almost like moist environment of wonderment. And so I started drawing these kind of like these bubbles that were forming all around that would literally just kind of drip, or they would explode, and the wetness would fill the environment. And so that's how it kind of, the drip started initially. And then from there, there's also a component in how I play with the sense of color. And with this new series of paintings, I'm harking back to a more of a psychedelic time of the excitement of when I was a little kid, this explosion of pop culture, from rock music, from the Beatles, and to just films and TV, the explosion of TV culture and everything that I kind of grew up with. So with this particular painting turning into more of these flowers, where before I had originally these, what I called MOD, manifestation of desire bubbles. And then I would have these kind of like intestine brain clouds that kind of work through. But within the things, everything kind of morphs depending on the themes of any particular exhibition. And over the last dozen years, a lot of my exhibitions dealt with a sense of mourning and loss. And it started with the death of my parents, where I ended up having a museum show at the Skirball where I created a home in the middle museum. So I had an 8,000 square foot space, and I put my parents' real furniture in there that people can come sit in my parents' real sofas, chairs, bedroom set. And then having, most recently in New Zealand, I had an exhibition called Memento Moa, where I created a moa bird that is this extinct New Zealand bird, but to use him as a metaphor for our loved ones that are lost. And that was in honor of my favorite cousin, Beverly. And then just recently, again, with 9 Lives, with my cat, Blackie, that passed away, that I had a 3,600 square foot exhibition in Beijing. So now, in the last couple years, I've been doing a series of paintings called Ichiku Park, and now here, like with Swell, where it's more, hopefully, an exciting time and a play and growth and of just seeing the world in a much more exciting way. So on that note, we're going to set up for me to do some signings. If you have your Uno decks, I'm happy to sign them. If you have the Mighty Paw, I'm happy to sign them too, or whatever. I'm here. I'm happy that you're all here. And let me just take a quick little video of everybody. So thanks for everyone for coming and listening to me speak. I'm going to need help. Do you need? I need help. So I can spell the problem. You are fine.